payday, Mitch. I'm proud of you. With this, you join the American workforce. A rare breed of determined and dedicated... Quit.
Now $129.95 gets you an N64 and a second atomic purple color controller free.
Hello and welcome to the last in the current series of Replay Retro. Yes, that's right, another 12 shows down and it's time for an extended break. This week we're heading back to the 5th generation console war to see how Nintendo stepped up to old rivals and new challengers alike with the Nintendo 64. In 1994, Nintendo's most bitter rival Sega released the Saturn as their entry to the 5th generation. Newcomer Sony also released their PlayStation in the same year, using information they had learned while working with Nintendo on the ill-fated CD add-on for the SNES. 1 year earlier, Panasonic had brought us the first version of the 3DO, and before that, several other systems had got the next generation off to a flying start. But it seemed Nintendo were late to the party, and the Super Nintendo just couldn't keep up anymore. 2D was quickly becoming the past. 3D games with shadows and textures stretched over polygons were the future of the industry. Nintendo had planned to get in on the action sooner, but had come up against a number of unforeseen problems with their new system, causing its development to be heavily delayed. So delayed, in fact, that in their desperation, Nintendo even ordered the release of the unfinished and far from perfected Virtual Boy, just to get something on the market, despite the protests of its development team, who were forced to watch the system they'd worked on crash and burn. Nintendo's real 5th generation hardware, codenamed Project Reality, was a joint venture with Silicon Graphics Incorporated, who produced a modified 4300i processor for the system to be combined with a Reality Immersion Engine coprocessor to manage the bulk of the graphics and audio work. This combination would be capable of rendering 32-bit pixels with 16.7 million available colours plus an 8-bit alpha channel. The console would also feature greatly advanced RAM years ahead of even the PC market and was capable of trilinear mip mapping and anti-aliasing to help correct texture distortion. Despite all this new technology under the hood, the system would still rely on cartridges rather than the new CD format used by all of its competitors, including Atari, whose Jaguar console had now been upgraded with a CD add-on unit. Nintendo stated this was to provide faster load times and to prevent piracy, also giving the added bonus of cartridge-based game saves and the ability to include extra hardware on the cartridge, just as they had done with the Super FX chip for their previous system. However, others didn't share Nintendo's belief in the outdated format, believing that the company had done this just to increase their licensing revenue, as publishers would have to get the cartridges from them before they could release anything at all. Developers too felt wronged, as they wouldn't be able to fit as much data on the cartridges as they could the new CDs. This led to companies like Square, who were famous for their role-playing games and had always been loyal to Nintendo, simply walking away, as they felt they could not create truly immersive worlds or use full motion video with such extreme limitations. Several other third parties agreed, and they too chose to abandon Nintendo. Soon though, the public got their first look at what was now known as the Ultra 64, prompting speculation that it would be released as the Ultra Famicom or the Ultra Nintendo, and in 1996 the Nintendo 64 finally went on sale, with European gamers having to wait until 1997 to get their hands on a PAL version of what Nintendo claimed to be the first 64-bit system, despite the Jaguar also claiming to be a 64-bit console. But by now the PlayStation was well out in front, having already sold 10 million units, and Nintendo was struggling to catch up, especially as their well-known developers had jumped ship and were now developing for Sony's system. Of course, Nintendo would not take this lying down, and despite being more powerful than its contemporaries, the N64 was deliberately cheaper than any of them, and regardless of third-party support, the company still had an impressive catalogue of characters and franchises, and debuted with the massively successful Super Mario 64, widely regarded as the benchmark for 2D games crossing over into the 3D world. Some third parties still showed the system real support, including British developer Rare, who brought a number of games to this console, including another benchmark game in GoldenEye 64, a game most gamers would agree is one of the best console FPSs of all time, even earning itself a re-release on the PS3 and Xbox 360 just this year. With such stunning games, the N64 looked like it was going to help Nintendo stamp their authority back on the video game market, and they weren't finished yet, improving the console further with the first example of force feedback via a rumble pack bundled in with the smash hit Starwing follow-up Lilac Wars, giving the player tactile response from the game for the first time ever in the home. Then, in 1998, an optional expansion pack doubled the system's RAM to 8 MB, allowing for games like the critically acclaimed Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, which the system otherwise couldn't handle, while also improving other games with resolution upgrades. Other accessories included the Game Boy Adapter Pack bundled with Pokemon Stadium, various memory cards, and even a voice recognition unit. So with clearly the most powerful hardware and some impressive games, surely the N64 overtook its competition and romped home to victory. But as usual, before we take a look and find out what really happened, let's just go over the hardware itself and a couple of the games. So here we are with the N64 itself. As you can see, it's a very nice looking machine. I love these two pillar things at the front here. And it's nice and smooth and sleek across. The advantage, I suppose, of not being a CD system is it doesn't have to have a big flat CD area, so it can be nice and aesthetic like this. It's very nice. Of course, because it's not a CD-based system, you have your cartridge port on the top here with a nice dust flap. Also on the top, you have your power switch, nice simple switch, and your reset button. Under here, if you take off this panel, there is a little spacer cartridge. If you remove this, even though it says do not remove, if you remove this, you can then put in the memory expansion. So that's how you can double the memory from 4 MB of RAM to 8 MB, but I don't have that expansion. On the front, there is a power LED, so that when the system is powered up, that will light up red. There's also the Nintendo 64 logo, and 4 controller ports. 4 controller ports obviously meaning you don't need a multi-tap, unlike the Sega Saturn, which required a multi-tap for 4-player games, unlike the PlayStation, which required a multi-tap for 4-player games, unlike the Jaguar, which required a multi-tap for 4-player games. Point to Nintendo there, I think. Around the side, you just get a bit of venting. Same again on the other side. On the back, you'll see there's quite a big hole here. Now this is where the power supply will go, and it's quite a weird power supply, so I'll show you that. You've got, obviously as you'd expect, a standard plug lead and all that, but on the end of it, you have this great big box, which is actually the like the transformer, which is interesting, and that plugs into the back there. It's interesting, it's the only system I know that does that, really. But it's nice that it ends in a normal plug. So I'd much rather have this system than have the transformer at the end. So that's good. And you can simply press this button underneath and pull to release that. Then over here, this is where you can connect the system to your TV. It uses the same connection that the Super Nintendo also had on it, so that you can use a SCART lead or an AV lead. However, you can also plug in this little box into it, which comes with the system. And now you can use your standard RF out cable, which is brilliant for me when filming. Underneath, what you'd expect, some shielding, little label containing warning information and all that kind of jazz. By taking this off, you reveal the expansion port that was designed for use with the N64 DD system. Put that back on there, cover that back up. Looking at the controller then, you can see this is a bizarre controller, this trident almost. And I don't like this controller. I do like its analog stick because it's very precise and very solid movement. You can hear it flicking back there. And I do like its D-pad. I like this section of buttons and the fact that those 4 there can be used as another D-pad. But that's where it ends. Everything is scattered everywhere. Because if I hold it like this, I can get to all the buttons, but I can't get to the stick very easily. And I can get to the bumpers, that's good, but I can't get to this Z button down here. So that's that done. If I hold it like this, I can get to the analog, and I can get to these buttons, and I can get to one bumper, and I can get to the Z, but I can't get to this bumper or the D-pad. Now, most games, obviously, are designed to accommodate that. But it just feels wrong that you can't access everything. It's a very odd controller. Like I said, lots of different ways you can hold it, because you can always hold it like that. Analog stick, D-pad, Z button, left bumper. It's just very bizarre. It's a very odd controller. Underneath, you find an expansion port here. That's where your memory cards go, or your rumble pack goes, or your Game Boy adapter pack goes. And then you've got a nice long length of flex with a plug on the end. This is the only system I think that uses this plug, which simply connects into the N64 like that. You'll notice my controller is red. They came in a variety of colours, just like the system itself did. Moving on to the games then. This is F1 World Grand Prix 2. Come in cardboard boxes, because we know Nintendo love cardboard boxes, even though cardboard boxes are terrible. But whatever. Inside there, when you yank it all out, find various leaflets and guff will drop out of the box. Your instruction manual, which for this game is massive, considering it's just a racing game. And then your cartridge itself. It's a nice chunky cartridge, but no end label. Why have no end labels? It's not if, when I lose the box, I'd like to be able to look across my games and see what they are. It's just annoying. Don't do this, game companies. Give us end labels. Oh. But anyway, the cartridge simply slots into the top of the console. Thusly, you switch the power to the on position, and as long as everything at the back is set up, you're ready to play some F1 World Grand Prix 2. And you might be wondering why I've picked a relatively boring sounding game to simple F1 racer. But I actually think this game really shows off the graphical capability of the N64, and you'll see what I mean when we get into it. To me, looking at this, the graphics are really solid. When we look at the different shots of the cars, there's a lot of really good effects going on here. Yes, I know Formula 1 cars don't tend to cut across the grass. I do. Alright, deal with it. The analog stick here gives really good, precise control. I've done it again, alright. I have genuine choice of making small movements or big movements like that. Whereas with the D-pad you can only make the tiny steering movements. So if you need to really adjust the turn and go in hard, you can't do that with the D-pad. But to me, you can see from the driver's position, you see there's lots of detail. The graphics for this game, I really can't see in that view. Ah! Boom! That ended badly. Oh, I lost my well fought second place because of changing view to show you guys the graphics. That's how much I love you guys. I don't love you. That's extreme. But I'm sure you'll agree, the graphics here are so good. I mean, we looked at Sega Rally Championship, one of my favourite races ever. We looked at that on the Saturn a couple of weeks ago. And this is just in another class when it comes to graphics. This is fantastic. See, with the D-pad you can see my range of steering is not as much. That was full steering with the D-pad. So it's nice to have much more precise control here. And the rumble pack is fully compatible with this game. So that means I can feel all this off-roading and doing more. And if I had the RAM expansion pack, that also is compatible with this game and puts it in a higher resolution, making these graphics even better. So right now this is just the standard N64 because I don't have that expansion pack. But yeah, I'm sure you get the idea. You won't really need to see any more. So we'll move on.
Clay Fighter 63 1/3.
So as the game just told you, this is Clay Fighter 63 1/3. Not really the fighter I would like to have shown you. I'd have liked to have gone with Killer Instinct, but I don't own it. But this is still a good fighter. I do like this. You can see the roster of fighters here. It's an interesting graphical style here. Obviously your characters are based on clay. There's just a very interesting graphical style going on. And just like with F1 World Grand Prix 2, you can see the graphics here are still very good, very solid. And the sound too is very solid. I would actually compare this to Celebrity Deathmatch on the PS2, graphics wise. It's a good fun fighter, and you can see there's a lot of depth to the background. I don't believe this. When I practiced this before, I was doing really well. Uh-oh.
Little girly combo.
I do like the way you can go all the way around this building. It's just a very solid fighter. I do enjoy this. And I'm not a massive beat 'em up fan really. But I do get a lot of play out of this. It's a good solid game with some great characters, some great moves. And I like the way that when you defeat someone, it doesn't just stop and go on to the next round. They just regenerate their health back. Can't help but feel his accent is a little bit racial. Hurrah! Victory is mine! And that was Clay Fighter 63 1/3. So this is Banjo-Kazooie, another excellent game from Rare. And a game I haven't played for ages, so I might not be able to show you very much here. Essentially, you are a bear who likes to wear a bird on his back, as you can see me being able to use him to fly there, or peck attack. And you can, if I remember how, switch and play as our birdie friend. But I cannot for the life of me remember how to do that now. Someone is... Ooh, that was a new attack. As was that. You collect up... Oh, that was silly. You collect up these musical notes, and you're also aiming to collect jigsaw pieces. I know I'm not really selling this game very well, but this is a great game. Wish I could remember how you switch character. You do get a lot of special moves as the game goes on. You're trying to rescue the bear, that's Banjo. Trying to rescue... Ooh, what was that? His sister, who has been kidnapped by the evil witch Gruntilda, who plans on stealing her beauty. So, you know, now you know the plot. It can be a bit awkward getting the hang of controlling the camera. That's something you can see I'm having problems with. Because as you can see, you can turn the camera around. Cannot believe I fell off there again. But no, as I say, I'm not really selling this game to you very well. But you can see graphically it's great. And if you like Super Mario 64, you will definitely like this game. That's probably the best way I can sell you this. If you like Super Mario 64, you like your what happens if you take a platformer and make it 3D, then you will love this game. That's really all I can say. Okay, I stole an orange without realising it, and that resulted in a good thing. Crime pays, kids. Always remember, crime pays. And there's my jigsaw piece for this level. Well, that was a fluke. The fact is that while the N64 may have been very powerful, it was also fatally flawed. A defect in the system meant it could only load small, limited colour depth textures, which were then stretched to cover large areas, causing blurring and distortion. Some developers did manage to get around these problems using clever trickery to knit several small textures together to give the impression of larger ones, or using simple shading in games where realism wasn't quite so important. Games like Mario Kart, for example. Another problem was the way in which the CPU had to go through the coprocessor for almost everything, slowing the system down, limiting its performance, and counteracting the effects of the advanced RAM. Some developers even went so far as creating complex custom microcode, altering the way the coprocessor worked to get the best from the system. However, this was very hard work and was best done on a game-specific basis, which greatly increased production time for N64 games, putting off many of the remaining developers and stopping the game library from ever reaching anywhere near the likes of the PlayStation. Even in Japan, where Nintendo had always smashed their rivals, the N64 was considered a niche system. The company tried to give it a push with the addition of the DD expansion in 2000, allowing for larger games and promising to add great deals of content, including some user-generated material, to normal N64 titles. However, most of this failed to materialise, and the expansion was never released outside of Japan, where it came with a mouse, modem and internet browser. The problem was that by then, the system already looked outdated. The Dreamcast from Sega had come along in 1998, and the PlayStation 2 was already on its way. Nintendo had arrived too late to have any real stake in the 5th generation before it ended, and the decision to stick with cartridges, combined with some serious hardware flaws, chased away most developers. The console did, however, manage to sell a more than respectable 35 million units in various colours and designs during its short life, and even after the arrival of the GameCube in 2001, it was still being produced, with the controller-shaped iQ being the final variant for the highly successful Chinese market in 2003. This system could be plugged into loading stations in game shops, where titles could be downloaded to its flash memory for very reasonable prices, while the system's final English-speaking release was Tony Hawk's 3 in 2002. The N64 is by no means an absolute failure, and is fondly remembered by many gamers thanks to some fantastic games. But there can be no denying that Nintendo had taken a real beating, and it wouldn't be till the 7th generation when the Wii and the DS proved they were still capable of market dominance. That's all for this week's show, and indeed, that wraps up Season 3. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to follow ReplayRetro on Twitter to find out what else is coming up on the channel before the next series begins. I hope you've enjoyed watching and will continue to do so, and I'll see you next time.